Teacher emailed the answer key but accused the kids? That doesn't add up. Why?
They said he cheated right there, in front of everyone. My son stood at the front of his classroom, holding a test he swore was his, while his teacher shook her head like the decision was already final. I had just walked in, called by the school, and within seconds, the accusation was public, loud, and humiliating. Mrs. Calder pointed at the paper. His answers match exactly. He copied. The class started whispering. Phones were already out. Ethan kept saying, "I didn't do it." Not defensive, confused, like he didn't even understand what he was being accused of. Then another student, Tyler, spoke up from his desk. I saw him looking at my test. That's when I stepped forward. Because something about that didn't add up. I looked at the teacher, then at Tyler, then back at my son, and I said one thing. "Are you absolutely sure?" They said yes. So I pulled out my phone and said, "Then let's watch it." Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The room didn't react right away. It was like everything stalled for half a second, like no one expected me to say that. Mrs. Calder frowned, just slightly, like she was trying to process what I meant. "Watch what, exactly?" she asked, her voice still firm but not as sharp as before. Behind Ethan, I could see a few students leaning forward in their seats. Someone in the back whispered, "What is he talking about?" Another kid raised their phone a little higher, trying to get a better angle. Ethan turned his head toward me, just for a second. His eyes were red not from crying, but from holding it in. There was something else there too, relief. Like he'd been waiting for me to say something, anything, that might slow this down. I gave him a small nod. He didn't smile, he just stopped talking. Mrs. Calder straightened the stack of papers in her hand like she needed something to hold on to. "Mr. Rivera," she said, more formal now, "this has already been reviewed. We don't need—" "Yes," I cut in, calm, not loud, just enough to stop her. "You do." That got the room quiet again. Even Mr. Halpern, who had been standing near the door with his arms crossed, shifted his weight slightly. He'd been silent the entire time, watching like this was routine. But now he was paying attention. I stepped a little closer to the front, closing the distance between me, Ethan, and Mrs. Calder. "Before we go any further," I said, looking directly at her, "I just want to be clear about what you're accusing him of." Her jaw tightened. "Your son submitted an exam with answers that match another student's work. That constitutes cheating." "Copied," I clarified. "Yes," she said. "Copied." I nodded slowly, like I was agreeing. "But I wasn't—" "And you're certain," I said, "that he got those answers by looking at someone else's paper during the test?" She didn't hesitate this time. "Yes." I turned my head slightly, glancing across the room. "Which student?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Mrs. Calder gestured toward the middle row. "Tyler Briggs." Every eye in the room shifted to him. Tyler didn't shrink under the attention. He leaned back in his chair, one arm draped casually over the backrest like he'd been expecting this moment. There was confidence there, too much of it. "Yeah," he said, shrugging. He kept looking over. It was obvious. Obvious. The word hung in the air like it settled everything. But it didn't. Because while everyone else was looking at Tyler now, I was watching something else: how quickly he answered, how easily the story came out, and how Mrs. Calder didn't question it for even a second. Ethan's voice cut in again, sharper this time. "That's not true." "Ethan," Mrs. Calder snapped, not even looking at him, "you've said enough." That was it. That was the moment the line got crossed. Not the accusation. Not even the public humiliation. It was the fact that he wasn't being allowed to defend himself. I exhaled slowly, then lifted my phone slightly. "You said his answers match?" I said. "Exactly." "Yes," she replied. "And your conclusion is that he copied from Tyler?" "That's correct." I tilted my head just a little. "Not the other way around?" A few students reacted to that quiet murmurs, a shift in energy. Tyler's expression changed. Not much, just a flicker. Mrs. Calder shook her head immediately. "Tyler reported the behavior himself." Of course he did. I looked back at Ethan. He was gripping the edges of that test paper so tightly it was starting to crumple. "Dad," he said under his breath, barely audible. "I didn't." "I know," I said. And I meant it. That wasn't instinct. That wasn't blind trust. I knew. Which is why I was here earlier than they expected. which is why I didn't argue when they called, which is why I didn't interrupt when they started accusing him. I needed them to say everything out loud first, to commit to it, to be absolutely certain. I looked back up at the front of the room. All right, I said quietly. Then I turned my phone so the screen faced them. I think we're done guessing. Mrs. Calder crossed her arms. Mr. Rivera, if this is some kind of misunderstanding. It's not, I said. I tapped the screen once. The classroom projector flickered. That got everyone's attention. Mr. Halpern straightened. What are you doing? Showing you what actually happened, I replied. The screen behind them came to life, glowing faintly blue before an image began to load. A video interface. Paused. Timestamp visible. The room went completely silent now. No whispers. No movement. Even Tyler sat up a little straighter. Mrs. Calder turned slowly toward the screen, then back to me. You can't just... I can, I said, and I am. My finger hovered over the play button. For this to make sense, I added, glancing briefly at Ethan, you're going to want to watch closely. Mrs. Calder's voice dropped tight and controlled. What exactly is this footage? I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, then at Tyler, then back at the screen. And then I said, this is from before your test even started. And I pressed play, but the screen hadn't fully resolved yet. The image was still sharpening, just enough to see a desk, a chair, a familiar room, and Ethan sitting in it. Mrs. Calder's voice came out quieter this time. What am I looking at? Look closely, I said. The video sharpened just enough for the details to settle in. A desk, a lamp, Ethan's room. He was sitting upright, pencil in hand, a worksheet spread neatly in front of him. A timestamp blinked in the corner, 10:02 p.m. the night before. A few students in the class leaned forward. Someone whispered, "That's his house." Mrs. Calder didn't speak right away this time. Her eyes stayed fixed on the screen, like she was trying to figure out where this was going before it got there. Ethan, still standing at the front of the room, turned slightly to look at the projection. His shoulders, tense just seconds ago, lowered just a little. He was studying, I said, keeping my voice steady. Last night, for your test. Mrs. Calder finally responded. That doesn't change what happened in this classroom. No, I said, but it explains something you missed. On the screen, Ethan worked through a problem step by step. No hesitation, no glancing around, just focused, deliberate writing. He erased once, corrected himself, then moved on. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't random, it was his work. I let the video play for a few more seconds before pausing it. Same format, I said, gesturing toward the test still in Mrs. Calder's hand. Same type of questions. That's a study guide, she replied quickly. We give those out all the time. Right, I said, so he prepared. There was a subtle shift in the room again. Not dramatic, not loud, but enough. The whispers weren't as confident anymore. Mrs. Calder adjusted her stance. Preparation doesn't explain identical answers. It explains why his answers would be correct, I said, consistently correct. Mr. Halpern stepped forward now, inserting himself into the space. Mr. Rivera, this still doesn't address the core issue. 2 students submitted nearly identical responses. I nodded. I agree. That's the issue. I tapped the screen again, rewinding a few seconds, then playing it forward. Ethan reached the final question. He paused, thought for a moment, then wrote his answer carefully. When he finished, he leaned back slightly, exhaled, and set the pencil down. Timestamp still visible. Everything documented. Everything his... I paused it again. Now here's the part I want you to think about, I said, turning back to the room. If he already worked through these problems the night before, understood them, solved them on his own. I let that hang for a second. Why would he need to copy anyone? That question didn't get answered. Not by Mrs. Calder, not by Mr. Halpern, but I didn't miss who reacted. Tyler. He shifted in his seat just slightly, but it was the first time he'd moved at all since the video started. His confidence wasn't gone, but it wasn't as solid either. Mrs. Calder crossed her arms tighter. You're making assumptions. We're talking about what happened during the test, not the night before. Exactly, I said. I turned back to the screen, exiting the current video. The classroom watched as I scrolled. One file, then another, each labeled with timestamps. Each organized, intentional. Mr. Halpern's voice came sharper this time. Where did you get those recordings? I didn't look at him. I asked the right questions, I said simply. Then I stopped scrolling. One file sat in the center of the screen. Classroom 11:17 a.m. The exact time of the exam. The room felt different now. Heavier. Even the students could feel it. Mrs. Calder took a step forward. Mr. Rivera, if you think you can just bring in unrelated— It's not unrelated, I said, cutting her off again. This time, my voice wasn't just calm. It was certain. I tapped the file but didn't press play yet. Instead, I looked directly at Tyler. Really looked at him. His jaw tightened. And for the first time since this started, he didn't say a word. I turned the phone slightly so everyone could see the title clearly. Then I said, "Let's talk about what actually happened during your test." My thumb hovered over the screen. And then I pressed play. But before the footage fully appeared, Mrs. Calder stepped forward, her voice sharp, controlled, but unmistakably urgent. "Stop, don't play that." The room froze, and every eye snapped to her. "Why not?" I asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move my hand away from the screen, but the question landed heavier than anything else I'd said so far. Mrs. Calder hesitated. Just for a second, but it was enough. "That footage," she said, choosing her words carefully, "may not reflect the full context of what was happening in the room." A few students exchanged looks. Someone in the back muttered, "Then why not just show it?" Mr. Halpern stepped in quickly. "We should handle this privately. This isn't appropriate for—" "No," I said, still calm. What wasn't appropriate was accusing him in front of everyone. That shut him down. I turned back to the screen. "This stays just as public." And I pressed play. The video loaded fully this time. A wide-angle view of the classroom appeared mounted high in the corner, capturing everything. Rows of desks, students seated, papers out. Timestamp: 11:17 a.m. The exact moment the test began. No one spoke. You could hear the faint hum of the projector, and nothing else. "There," I said quietly, pointing. Ethan was visible near the front left row, head down, pencil moving, focused. No movement toward anyone else, no glances, no hesitation. Just writing. Mrs. Calder said nothing. The video continued. "Now watch carefully," I added. A few seconds passed. Then the attention shifted, not because I said anything, but because the footage made it obvious. Tyler, second row from the back. At first he looked normal, head down, writing. But then he paused. Looked down, not at his test, but lower. His hand moved beneath the desk. Someone in the classroom whispered, "Wait." I didn't interrupt. I let the footage speak. Tyler adjusted his posture slightly, angling his body just enough to block his lap from the teacher's line of sight. But not from the camera. A faint glow flickered under the desk. A phone screen. The room reacted this time audibly. "What? No way." Mrs. Calder stepped closer to the screen. "That doesn't prove anything." "Keep watching," I said. Tyler's eyes flicked down again, then back up to his paper, then down again. Repeating. Not guessing. Checking. Matching. Ethan, meanwhile, hadn't moved, still focused, still writing independently. The contrast was clear and uncomfortable. Mr. Halpern shifted beside the door. Students sometimes check the time. On their laps, someone in the class shot back under their breath. A few quiet laughs, nervous, sharp. The balance in the room was changing. Fast. I let the video continue another few seconds, then paused it. "Let's go back," I said. I rewound slightly, just a few frames, then played it again, slower this time. Tyler's hand moved. Phone visible for a split second longer. Just enough. "Pause it there," a student near the front said instinctively. I already had. The frame froze. Tyler's phone partially visible. Not clear yet, but unmistakably there. Mrs. Calder crossed her arms tighter. Even if he had a phone, that doesn't explain why his answers match Ethan's. I finished. She didn't respond. Because now, the question had flipped. Completely. I stepped a little closer to the screen. "Look at their positions," I said. "He's behind Ethan, not beside him." I pointed. "If anyone was copying—" I let the sentence hang. No one finished it out loud, but they didn't need to. Tyler shifted in his seat again, this time more noticeably. Zoom in, someone said quietly. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I tapped the screen once. The video zoomed digitally enhanced. Grainier, but closer. Closer to Tyler. Closer to his hands. Closer to the phone. The image sharpened just enough to show the outline of the screen. Text. Lines. Structured. Not random. Not a timer. Not a blank screen. Something formatted. I paused it again. The room felt tight now, pressurized. Mrs. Calder's voice came out lower this time. That could be anything. I turned my head slightly toward her. Exactly, I said. Then I looked back at Tyler. He wasn't leaning back anymore. He was sitting upright, rigid, watching the screen like he wanted to look away but couldn't. I tapped once more. The video advanced a few frames. The phone tilted just slightly. And for a brief second, the screen became clearer, clear enough to recognize the structure. Numbered answers. Clean formatting. Not handwritten. Not guessed. Official. I paused it immediately. No one spoke. Not a whisper. Not a breath. I looked directly at Tyler, then back at the screen, and said, quietly, "That's not a student's work, is it?" No one answered. Not Tyler. Not Mrs. Calder. Not even Mr. Halpern. The silence felt different now, heavier, tighter, like the room itself was waiting to see who would break first. Tyler swallowed, his eyes still locked on the frozen frame of his own phone screen. That, he started, then stopped. That doesn't prove anything. It wasn't confident anymore. It sounded forced. I didn't respond to him right away. Instead, I stepped closer to the screen again and tapped once, zooming in just a little more. The image degraded slightly, pixels stretching, but the structure on the phone became clearer. Numbered lines. Short, precise entries. Answer format. Not notes. Not guesses. An answer key. Let's line this up, I said. I turned slightly toward Mrs. Calder. You said Ethan's answers matched Tyler's. Yes, she said, but the certainty wasn't there anymore. I nodded. Exactly matched. She hesitated this time before answering. Yes. I gestured toward the frozen frame, and Tyler had this open during the test. That still doesn't... It does, I said, cutting in not louder, just sharper, because he's not looking at Ethan to get answers. I pointed directly at the screen. He's looking down to check them. That landed. You could feel it. A student in the back whispered, he already had them. Another voice, quieter. That's why they matched. Tyler shook his head quickly. No, that's not. Then explain it, I said, turning to face him fully for the first time. That stopped him. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Nothing came out, because there wasn't a clean explanation anymore. I let that moment sit for a second, just long enough for everyone in the room to feel the shift. Then I tapped the screen again. The video resumed. Tyler's eyes flicked between the phone and his paper again. Then, briefly, very briefly, he glanced up. Not at Ethan's test. At Ethan himself, like he was checking position, timing, not copying, confirming. I paused it right there. See that? I said. No one argued, because now the pattern was obvious. Ethan hadn't moved. Not once. Still in the same posture, same focus, same steady pace. Independent, consistent, clean. Everything you'd expect from someone doing their own work. I turned back to Mrs. Calder. You didn't see any of this? I asked. Her expression tightened. I monitor the entire classroom. But you didn't see him using a phone? I pressed. She didn't answer. Mr. Halpern stepped forward again, trying to regain control. Even if that's true, we still need to verify what was on that device. Good, I said. I reached into my pocket again. This time, slower. Deliberate. Because I already did. That caught them off guard. Tyler's head snapped up. What? I pulled out my phone again and stepped closer to the projector. There's one more part you haven't seen, I said. Mrs. Calder's voice dropped, tense. Mr. Rivera. I ignored her. Tapped the screen. The video minimized. Another file appeared. Not footage this time. An image, a still, captured, time stamped. I didn't open it yet. Instead, I looked at Tyler. Really looked at him. His confidence was gone now, replaced with something tighter. Worried. Before I show this, I said, I want to give you a chance. The room held its breath. Is there anything you want to explain? Tyler didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even look away. And that was the answer. I nodded once, then turned back to the screen. All right, I said quietly. My thumb hovered over the image. This is where it stops being a question. I tapped it open, and the screen began to load. But before the image fully appeared, Mrs. Calder took a sharp step forward, her voice no longer controlled. Don't. Too late. The image was already coming into focus. And whatever was on it was about to change everything. The image locked into focus. Clear, still, undeniable. It was Tyler's phone screen captured mid-test, angled just enough to show everything. Not blurry like the video, not partial. Perfectly visible. A full answer key. Numbered, typed, clean formatting. And at the top of the page, small, but unmistakable, was the header, Calder, period 3, exam key. No one spoke. The room didn't even whisper this time. It just stopped. Tyler stared at the screen like he didn't recognize it, like if he held still long enough it might disappear. That's not, he started, his voice cracking slightly. That's not mine. It is, I said calmly. I tapped the screen once more, enlarging the top corner. The timestamp, 11:19 a.m. During the test, then another detail, a notification bar at the top, faint but readable. An email preview from M. Calder. Mrs. Calder's breath caught, not loud, but close enough. I didn't look at her yet. I kept going. Sent last night, I said, 10:41 p.m. I opened the next file, an email screenshot. Same header, same formatting, subject line, materials for review. But the attachment wasn't a study guide. It was the answer key, the exact one now sitting on Tyler's phone during the test. A ripple moved through the classroom, quiet, stunned reactions. Someone whispered, "She sent it?" Another voice, sharper, "That's the actual answers." Now I turned. Mrs. Calder looked like she was trying to hold on to something that wasn't there anymore. That email wasn't, she began, but stopped, because even she could hear how it sounded. Wasn't what? I asked. She didn't answer. Because there wasn't a version of that sentence that fixed this. I shifted my attention back to Tyler. You got the answer key before the test, I said. You used it during the test. He shook his head immediately. No, I didn't. You checked it, I continued steady. Every few questions. That's what we saw. His silence after that was louder than anything he'd said. I let it sit. Then I added, and when the answers matched, you pointed at him. I gestured toward Ethan. At the front of the room, still holding that same test paper. Still processing everything that was unfolding. That's not what happened, Tyler said, but there was no structure left to it. No confidence. Just reaction. Then explain the email, I said. He couldn't. No one could. Because now the pieces didn't just suggest something. They aligned. Perfectly. I turned back to Mrs. Calder. You sent the key, I said, by mistake or otherwise. It ended up with him. Her voice came out quieter now. That was not intended for students. I didn't say it was, I replied, but it got there. Mr. Halpern stepped forward again, but this time there was no authority behind it, just damage control. We need to pause this and bring administration. They're already involved, I said. That stopped him. I requested access to the classroom footage this morning, I continued, filed it before I walked in here. Mrs. Calder's shoulders dropped just slightly, enough to show she understood. This wasn't contained anymore. The classroom door opened. Right on cue. An assistant principal stepped in, Miss Donnelly, her expression already serious, like she'd been briefed just enough to know this wasn't routine. I think we need to continue this in the office, she said, scanning the room, then the screen, then Tyler. No one argued. They didn't need to. The aftermath didn't happen all at once. It unfolded in layers. Tyler was removed from the classroom immediately. Phone confiscated. Statements taken. By the end of the day, his parents were involved, and a formal academic integrity violation was filed not just for cheating, but for falsely accusing another student. The social shift was immediate. The same students who had whispered about Ethan earlier now avoided eye contact with him altogether, not out of suspicion anymore, but because they knew they got it wrong. Mrs. Calder was placed under review. Not just for the email, though, that alone was serious, but for how quickly she made the accusation and how publicly she handled it. There were questions now about judgment, about procedure, about bias. Mr. Halpern was pulled into it too, his role examined, his silence during key moments questioned. The school didn't ignore it. They couldn't. Too many students had seen it. Too many had recorded it. And the evidence wasn't debatable. Ethan's record was cleared that same week. The 0 was removed. His original grade, earned, not copied, was reinstated. But the part that mattered more didn't show up on paper. It was the moment he walked back into that same classroom a few days later. Same desks, same students, same front of the room. But everything felt different. No whispers this time. No phones out. Just quiet. He took his seat, set his things down, and for the first time since all of this started, no one questioned him. Not out loud. Not silently. Not at all. On the drive home that afternoon, he finally asked me, "You already knew, didn't you?" I kept my eyes on the road. I knew something didn't make sense. He looked down at his hands. I didn't even know how to prove it. "I know," I said, and that was the part that stayed with me. Not the accusation. Not even the evidence. It was how fast everything turned against him, without proof, without hesitation. And how close it came to sticking. Unless someone stopped it. Unless someone asked one more question. Because, in the end, it wasn't just about clearing his name. It was about exposing how easily the wrong story can take hold, when the right one isn't given a chance. And once the truth finally showed up, it didn't just offend him. It forced everyone in that room to see exactly what they missed.
If you were him, would you trust that school again? Or this is bigger than one mistake?